ready? Who ready? We ready. Who ready? Who? We ready. Who? Who ready? Who? We ready. Who?
Buffalo Bills fans, what's going on? Welcome into your March 16th, episode 3 of the Founders Pod. I am one of the co-founders of Built in Buffalo and one of your co-hosts. I'm DM3 Dave Myers, and this handsome gentleman here with me tonight is Akeem Richens. Rich, how are you feeling, my good man, on this Saturday night?
Akeem Richens, Built in Buffalo. If you don't know us by now, please get to know us. We are the Founders Pod only and exclusively on the Built in Buffalo network. DM3, my brother, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good today. Free agency has kicked in. We've made some moves, right? And we always find ways to make moves under the cap ramifications and the stress we be under. Our GM does a good job letting waves go by and finding good signings at good base value. So right now I'm swell, DM3. I'm swell.
So you're saying that the cap is real.
The cap is real. The cap
100%.
is real.
You're 100%.
For the Buffalo Bills, especially for the Buffalo Bills.
We have a loaded show tonight. We have a lot of stuff me and Akeem have been talking about all week for the show. We've been excited, especially since the Bills signed Curtis Samuel. He's going to be a heavy debate for us tonight. Before we get started, let's get all the business out of the way. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us that thumbs up. That helps us with the YouTube algorithm, and it lets us know that you guys like the content we're putting out. Smash that subscribe button, smash the notification bell. That way you know when all of our content goes live. We have live shows every day of the week, Sunday through Saturday. If you're watching on Facebook, please share, like this, comment. If you're watching on X, please drop comments in there and also repost this. One thing I do want to mention, if you're watching whatever platform you're watching, and drop comments in there. If you're on YouTube, obviously you can super chat. Those get priorities. But we want the engagement, not just for us, but between all the Bills fans watching the show to interact with each other. And it's a great avenue for you guys to do that. Okay, Akeem, a lot of news this week. Like I said, Stefon Diggs is making his way around social media. The Bills signed Curtis Samuel. We want to talk about Khalil Shakir. What does that mean for him? The Bills signed a few free agents. Where do you want to start first?
Let's start with our alpha male number one wide receiver in Stefon Diggs. Him.
Okay.
Guy, him. Because every year it seems as if there is some type of off-season hoopla with Stefon Diggs. And now we have to waste our time talking about things that's not possibly going to happen in Stefon Diggs being traded because of the type of tweets or posts he likes to tweet and post. So let's go Stefon Diggs.
You know, I dropped a 5-minute truth bomb in our group chat, on our Facebook group chat that has all the Built in Buffalo content creators in it. And I think it was received mostly well. So I'll kind of sum up what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Stefon Diggs is a smart man. He's a businessman. We know that he uses social media for more avenues than just playing for the Buffalo Bills, right? And showing everybody his NFL career, right? He's got a fashion line. He's got all this other stuff he does. Mm-hmm. And that's his platform for Instagram. He uses that for a lot of how he puts his following out there and interacts with people. Now on X/Twitter, if you're not on there, Stefon Diggs seemingly every year at this time when there's not a lot going on. Free agency's happening, but he drops these cryptic tweets that seem to just kind of open the avenue for the national media, Bills Mafia, the Bills media creators. Like, it opens the door for us to try to interpretate what he's thinking, what he's talking about. And now we all know that this is one big troll job, right? We all know that he does this for the engagement. He does this for the interaction. He does this for, something to do on, I don't know if he's bored or whatever, but something to do on X. Let me get your opinion on the man, I think I'll preface it by saying I think we all enjoy Stefon Diggs. I know I enjoy him being a Buffalo Bill. The 4 years he's been here is probably the most productive 4 years by a wide receiver in this franchise's history. I can go on record to say that, and the stats can back it up. We've seen the stuff that he does before games playing catch with kids, and we know that he doesn't cause any issues in the locker room. The bromance with Josh seems to be okay. There doesn't seem to be any issues there. So what's your take on, dig into this for me. Like, what's your take when you see Stefon Diggs not saying anything on Twitter for like a month, and now all of a sudden it's like every couple hours there's just a random screen, or that could mean 55 different things. But
Mhm.
what's your take on all this? Like, what does this mean to you? Does it mean anything? Do you like it? Do you hate it?
I it's annoying. I would say that. I'm not going to say I don't like it, I don't hate it, but I do think it's rather annoying. But at the same time, we have to look at the position that Stefon Diggs play. Stefon Diggs plays the wide receiver position, and who usually have confrontations? What positions have the most confrontations, or what positions act out the most in the NFL? And that position is that wide receiver position, and that's why you have terms called divas and guys that like to seek attention. And I'm thinking that Stefon Diggs is along those lines of those guys that understands. He's a very intellectual, very high IQ, smart individual. So he understands exactly what he's doing when he goes in his phone or his laptop or his iPad or whatever he does to write posts, those type of posts that he posts, right? So he knows that's controversial. He knows that it's going to give the Buffalo Bills fans and media outlets an uproar, and he does it anyway. So I'm drawn to the conclusion that Stefon Diggs is a guy that loves the attention. He loves the attention in a subdued way. He don't want to be that guy to go in the middle of the dance floor and dance, but he wants to find some way
Off to the side,
where he can get some type of attention, and that's the conclusion I've drawn for Stefon Diggs. And I say another thing. It's okay when you having big seasons, and I'm not saying that Stefon Diggs didn't have a big season last season. But it's okay when you having 1,500-yard seasons and 1,300-yard seasons and 10 touchdowns and being consistent throughout the season, and you having off-season discussions that you want to have. But it's another thing when you do this and your last 9 games, you're 44 receptions, 388 yards, and Khalil Shakir has outperformed you. So I'm more interested in getting Stefon Diggs back to that number one production that we've been accustomed to seeing throughout the course of the first 4 years. Let's do that. Let's base and get some attention on the football aspect as opposed to why Stefon Diggs is tweeting what he's tweeting. Is he going to get traded? Knowing the dead cap is a situation where it's basically untradeable. We're still having these baseless discussions about Stefon Diggs. Let's talk about production on the football field.
I agree, and I think we just wanted to talk about it because it's going around. It's making its way around social media right now. So we just wanted to touch base on it. To me, it's like, I try to ignore it, but as a content creator and as someone who's a diehard Bills fan, and I'm on social media a lot in my personal life, I feel like I don't want to see this stuff because then we have to see all the negative stuff. And I don't want to have to sift through that and do the constant defending the fact that he doesn't want to go anywhere. He's not going anywhere. He's doing this just to get a rise out of you. Just leave it alone. But I will say I do agree with your take on let's just let the production speak for itself, and then let's just keep everything else moving on, because we know how hard he works in the offseason. We know what he can do when he puts his 100% behind his abilities. So I think let's just keep it at that. I don't really want to spend too much more time on this, so I thought we'd touch on it and then we could just kind of keep it moving. But this conversation talking about the production on the field of Stefon Diggs, I think directly correlates to our next topic, and I want to spend a chunk of time. So for everybody in the chat that's been already asking about Curtis Samuel, we're going to spend some time on Curtis Samuel. I know Akeem wanted to spend a good bit of the show on him.
Yep.
I wanted to spend a good bit of time on him. we both, in our free agent pre-show that we did 2 weeks ago before free agency, we talked about Curtis Samuel. We talked about how much it would be a good fit. I think both of us were concerned with how much it would cost to get Curtis Samuel, because the crop of free agent wide receivers wasn't going to be as vast, I think, as originally anticipated. You had guys like Mike Evans went and re-signed with the Buccaneers. There's other players like T. Higgins got franchise tagged, and other players were just going away from free agency. Not saying that they're not available, but they're not in the free agent market. So I think the values went down. And then we saw what Gabe Davis was able to get. And then some of the other kind of middle tier towards the top tier wide receivers.
Yep.
And I thought Curtis Samuel was either right on the fringe of the top tier or in that middle tier. So let's start it this way. Akeem, what was your initial reaction when, we were going crazy in our group chat talking about how we signed Curtis Samuel? What was your initial reaction?
I loved it. I loved the signing because this was a guy that I was targeting as soon as the clock hit 0 and we lost against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm looking at that game. I'm looking at Josh Allen throw 100 balls behind the line of scrimmage. I'm understanding now, based on what I'm watching, what type of offense that Joe Brady's trying to implement, the short passing attack, to get guys in space, to want guys to use their yak ability, their speed and explosiveness to extend plays and help Josh Allen out. And I seen Curtis Samuel being a free agent and marrying that, knowing that his 2020 season under Joe Brady with the Carolina Panthers was the best of his career. It instantly struck me as an ideal match for the Buffalo Bills in acquiring Curtis Samuel, because he is exactly what Joe Brady wants to implement on offense. And we need guys, and I understand we're going to talk about outside receivers and slot receivers. Is he a 3? Is he a 2? I think the important thing is to maximize the offense and scheme we're trying to run. And to maximize the offense and scheme we're trying to run, we have to get players to fit that scheme. And Curtis Samuel fit that scheme to a T. So I love the signing.
Yeah, you talk about Curtis Samuel's time. I put a tweet out, and we talked about this last week, or was it last week or the week before? I think it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about the fact that Brandon Beane was the assistant general manager when Curtis Samuel was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. We talked about the fact that in 2020, Curtis Samuel had his best season when Joe Brady was in his first year as offensive coordinator. So if you look at that 2020 season, 70 plus receptions, 800 plus yards receiving, he had over 200 yards rushing. That's important. And I'm going to bring this back up here in a little bit. To me, I think the signing was, I was happy about the signing, and I was kind of a little concerned about the money aspect of it.
Okay.
Because is this something we're going to look back on and say, the money that we gave Curtis Samuel, $8 million, he's got $15 million guaranteed. He's going to be on this team for at least 2 years, depending on how he performs, at least 2 of those years. Is this, in a year that we're extremely strapped, is this money spent in the right position? A lot of people will say yes, because they look at the weapons that Josh Allen needs to have to compete with, the top teams like the Chiefs and, the other teams that like the Bengals in the AFC. And I think it was money well spent. I mean, time will tell, right? I mean, he's going to have to execute. I am a little concerned about his injury history. The last 2 seasons, relatively, he's been healthy. But before that, he's got some things that are a little concerning. It's the soft tissue injuries that just never seem to heal right. Like, he had hamstring issues. He had groin issues. He had a foot issue. And that was obviously when he was with Carolina. So does that concern you at all? And then I'll give you some more of my take on this. Does that injury, can he be considered injury prone? Does that concern you at all since he's been healthy? He missed only 1 game in the last 2 years, I believe. Does that concern you?
7-year career, out of 114 possible games, he missed 23 games. He missed, I believe, 6 games early on in his career. He had that fractured foot. He missed some more games throughout the course of his career. Last couple of seasons, he's been relatively healthy. As you alluded to, only 1 game. I'm not concerned about his injury history. You know, that doesn't mean he won't get injured. No, I think it's a combative sport, and those type of things can and may happen, God forbid, and knock on wood. But am I overly concerned with his injury history? No, I'm not overly concerned with his injury history. And on top of that, this is why I like having a Curtis Samuel and having a Khalil Shakir, because if one goes down, now we have, like you said, we have similar guys that can do similar things. So the drop off wouldn't be too steep, God forbid, if one goes down and now the other guy had to play a more of a significant role or more playing time than he normally does. And the Buffalo Bills wouldn't have to change that playbook much because these guys play and have similar roles. So overall, no, I'm not concerned with Curtis Samuel's injury history.
All right, yeah, because you brought up Khalil Shakir. We're gonna spend some time on Khalil Shakir because I do want to discuss Khalil Shakir. So let me spit some information out to you.
Okay.
We briefly touched on it when we were doing our pre-show conversation. 52% of Curtis Samuel's snaps in his career have come out of the slot. 45% of his snaps in his career have come in another position at, outside the X position, what have you. And that leaves just a few percent lined up as a running back or, in a different bunch formation or whatever. That's a topic that we're going to discuss a lot more when we talk about Khalil Shakir, because he's lined up for half of his NFL career in the slot. So we'll get back to that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep.
Polar opposite compared to Gabe Davis when we're talking about depth of target. Gabe Davis was always in the top 3 or 4 for depth of target, right? And that was who he was coming out of college. Gabe Davis, we knew, was that guy. He was a vertical threat. He didn't do the underneath stuff. They tried in 2022. They tried it a little bit this year when Joe Brady took over. It just wasn't where he fit in.
Right.
So depth of target to me is a big deal. So for Curtis Samuel in his career, his average depth of target is 7.5 yards. So again, I'll put a bow on all this stuff I'm gonna talk about here. Just I want to put this stuff out there so that everybody can just understand and digest a lot of this stuff.
I like it.
In his career, he's only been targeted 29 times of a target that was over 25 yards. 25 yards air target. He caught 21 of them. So that's a really good success rate. Really good. It's like 68%. That's really good. That's actually third best in the NFL in his career, or since he's been in the league. Average depth of defender. This is one that's really good. Average depth of defender is 3.1 yards per target.
That's separation. That's impressive separation. Yep.
Right. That
impressive.
That is huge. Huge. His drop rate the last 3 years is 4%, which is in the top 5% of the NFL for pass catchers. And that's everybody, included tight ends and running backs.
I like it.
A couple things too. In his 7 NFL seasons, he's had 5 different offensive coordinators. That doesn't include going into his 6th with the Bills. And we can talk about the quarterback play. He played for Cam Newton, but Cam Newton was towards the end of his career. He was kind of banged up. That's where he was missing a lot of time. And then obviously they went through Kyle Allen and Teddy Bridgewater. Then he went to Washington, where they had the likes of Sam Howell and Carson Wentz and stuff like that. So I say all that to say this.
I like it.
Is Curtis Samuel a slot receiver, or is Curtis Samuel an outside receiver, an X receiver? What do you think?
And here's the thing, right? At the end of the day, Joe Brady, that Buffalo Bills offensive staff, they're going to be multiple. There are going to be snaps where Khalil Shakir lines up in the slot, in the outside. Same with Curtis Samuel. Same with Stefon Diggs. The only thing is, obviously, the percentages will differentiate. But where do I place Curtis Samuel right now as the roster is currently constructed? There's no draft picks. We're not in the draft, so I'm thinking about the current roster. I'm thinking Curtis Samuel is an X receiver, and I'm going to tell you. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit and tell you why I believe he is the X receiver for the Buffalo Bills. Number one, we'll talk about Khalil Shakir in a minute, but just to talk about him briefly, he had a lot of success last year, right? And he didn't play. He played over 70% of his snaps for his NFL career in the slot position. And if it's working, why would you want to change that? I don't want to mess that up. I want Khalil Shakir to keep ascending and developing how I see him developing now, currently. Now,
hold on. You know what play locked in that Khalil Shakir was the slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills? It was the play against the Steelers. One when he caught the pass, he did that crazy when he spun out of that tackle and then took it to the house.
Yeah.
That to me, if you saw the separation he got on that one, that to me, I'm like, all right, he needs to be here in the slot for the rest of how long he's a Bill. Okay. Sorry, carry on.
You're fine. You're fine. And I wouldn't mess that up for Khalil Shakir's development and for the Buffalo Bills as an offense, right? Now, getting back to Curtis Samuel, like I spoke about earlier in the show, he is a versatile player that you could utilize in multiple facets within the offense. And as much as Curtis Samuel's being labeled as a slot receiver, as much as he played slot over the last 2 seasons, over 70% of his snaps the last 2 years came from the slot. In Ohio State, over 1,000 offensive snaps, only 66 snaps in the slot position his entire college career at Ohio State. But I give some credit to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, when Curtis Samuel got drafted, they put him at the outside, that boundary position. And in 2017, before he went down with his fractured foot, 140 snaps for Curtis Samuel offensively, 92 offensive snaps was played on the outside. That accounts for 64% of his snaps. In 2018, Curtis Samuel, 318 offensive snaps, 239 of those snaps was on the outside. That accounts for 75% of his snaps. He had a 71.9 receiving grade per PFF, right? That is, in his 7-year career, that is his second best receiving grade of his career. Curtis Samuel, second best receiving grade of his career, came as a boundary receiver, right? 12.7 yards per catch, 2018 as an outside receiver, as a boundary receiver. 9.9 yards per reception this season with the Washington Commanders. His career best with Joe Brady yards per reception is 11.1 in 2020. His career best year with Joe Brady was at 11.1 yards. Boundary receiver, he has 12.7 yards per reception. And in 2019, 668 offensive snaps, 478 of them snaps on the outside, which accounts for 70.7% of his snaps. So Curtis Samuel has developed as an outside receiver, and he's had success with the Carolina Panthers as an outside receiver. I know he can create separation as an outside receiver and as a slot receiver. I know Khalil Shakir is successful as a slot receiver. I'm not sure how he is as an outside receiver. I know that he can play it. So what type of success and rate can he play that outside position to? So right now, how I see fit, I think Khalil Shakir is the slot receiver and Curtis Samuel is the outside boundary receiver.
So basically what you're saying is that Washington put him in a box and put him, they kind of stuck him in a box and said, you're going to be a slot receiver. because when he was an outside receiver, boundary receiver for the Panthers, it was working, right? Basically what you're saying. And
yeah,
I think that, and like I said, when he's targeted downfield, there's a 68% success rate. Like, that's not by accident. It's because he creates separation, because he runs a 4.31 40. That's where you get it. I also think that he can do other things too. Like I said, I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that creates separation, and you can line him up wherever you want. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up outside. You could do anything that you want. If Diggs goes down, you can line him up for the target share that Diggs is going to get, and he's going to give you separation. His percent rate of how fast he gets off the line is in the top 5%. I don't have the exact metric in front of me from Next Gen Sports, but separation off the line, he was in the top 5%. That was from the last 3 years when he was in Washington. So they used him more in the slot. I don't know. And I said this before we came on air. I think Beane just wants a guy that can get in space, no matter where that space is, and make plays, because he's got separation. He's got the speed. He's got the yak ability. Same as Dalton Kincaid, right? He's a pass catcher. Give him the ball in space and let him do work. So to me, I think it's all about how they're trying to attack this offense and what Joe Brady wants to do, because we saw Joe Brady become a very run heavy team down the stretch. Now, I don't know if that was just because of the opponents we were playing, if that was a scheme fit thing. So we'll have to see, because before we get into Khalil Shakir, so does this to you change what the Buffalo Bills do in the first round of the NFL draft next month?
Now, right quick before I answer that question, right? Joe Brady, talking about Joe Brady a little bit, it's ultimately up to him to scheme these guys up. He know that he has a guy like Khalil Shakir. He know that he had a guy like Curtis Samuel, and they do similar things. And being an offensive coordinator, I'm about 95% sure he had a lot of say in acquiring Curtis Samuel. So it's up to the offensive coordinator at the end of the day to maximize all of these guys' players' skill sets and get the job done. And I think he's capable of doing so. Back in 2020 with the Carolina Panthers, DJ Moore had over 1,000 yards receiving. Robbie Anderson had over 1,000 yards receiving. And your slot receiver, Curtis Samuel, had 851. So being that he had guys and had success with those guys in the past, I want him to translate that to the Buffalo Bills. And I think he's getting the offensive players that matches his skill sets to do so.
I think too that he finally has a quarterback that, not talking about Joe Brady, I'm talking about Curtis Samuel. You could see when they interviewed him and he was meeting with the press and he was asked about Josh Allen, like, dude just had stars. He just lit up because he actually has an all-world caliber quarterback now, instead of playing for a different quarterback every season for the last 4 years, which is what he's done. He's had a different quarterback last year in Carolina, last 3 years in Washington. They've all been different quarterbacks. So
getting back.
What's that?
No, go ahead.
I just want to, like you said, I like the fact that it gives us multiple options. I'm trying not to dig into the Khalil Shakir conversation, because I know we're going to go along on that one too. But I like the fact that this does give us options. And like I said earlier, time will tell with the financially strapped, salary cap situation that the Bills have, if this will, work out long term and be something that we can look back on and say that this was a really bright move for the Bills. Because up until the last minute, we heard the Bills were in on Eric Armstead, right? And that was probably going to be more than what they just doled out for Curtis Samuel. So that probably would have changed a lot of what's going to happen the next couple of weeks in free agency and the draft. So I'll just ask you this real quick. What does this, like I asked you earlier, does this change? And I don't want to talk about the draft too much. Does this change your perspective on what the Bills should do in round one at all?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't change my perspective on what the Bills should do round one. I still want the Buffalo Bills to attack with a wide receiver in round 1. Get Josh Allen as much offensive talent around him as possible. Get him the most he's ever had. There's nothing wrong with that. It isn't illegal. So yes, I still want the Buffalo Bills to attack by getting wide receiver the first round. Another thing is we don't have spring chickens over here. Next season, Stefon Diggs will be 32.
Exactly.
Next season, Curtis Samuel will be 29. Next season, Khalil Shakir will be in contract year. We don't know who Justin Shorter is and Andy Isabella and KJ Hamler. We need to draft another guy that can make an impact now and can be a core player for the Buffalo Bills in the future. No, I would not change my stance. I'm still going to get an offensive playmaker round 1 and get me a wide receiver.
So let me throw this at you. Before the draft happens, as the depth chart stands right now, and this obviously is going to change depending on what they do in the draft, 11 personnel for the Bills. For those out there that don't know what that is, it's a tight end, a running back, and 3 wide receivers. Right now, tight end would be Kincaid. I think he's 1A. James Cook, Stefon Diggs, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir. That's a pretty formidable. I'm pretty good with that. Yeah, right? And that's without adding anything else going forward.
I like it.
12 personnel. That's 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and 2 receivers. You got Kincaid and Knox, which I think is pretty good duo for 1-2 punch at tight end, depending on how you're looking at it, if it's blocking or pass catching. Then you got Cook, Diggs, and I would put Samuel there at number 2. That's pretty good, and that's without doing anything else in the draft. All right. Smash the like button. We got almost 500 people watching here between all 3 platforms, and we have just a handful of likes. So if you guys could smash the like button, that tells all of the algorithms on all of the social media platforms that you guys like what we're doing. I think it makes us feel pretty good that we're putting out some good content. Drop some comments, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, smash that notification bell. We have live shows every day. And with the draft coming, we're going to have all kinds of draft content and all that stuff coming too. So, all right, let's talk about Khalil Shakir. Let's talk about Khalil Shakir. I feel like that he is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing, however you want to look at it.
I think it's a good thing.
How do you I'm gonna go all over the place with this conversation because I love me some Khalil Shakir. I loved him since we drafted him. I was mock drafting him in the 2nd round of the Bills 2 years ago. I thought that he was underutilized his rookie season, and then last year finally he started breaking out midway through and really showed us what he could do. So Khalil Shakir to you. So you think he's the slot receiver?
Yes.
Going forward.
Yes, I think that again, we don't know what the draft will hold, but Khalil Shakir, he played so well and he was so reliable for Josh Allen and so trustworthy and made big plays in crucial moments as the slot receiver for the Bills. I think it's only right that he would continue to transcend at the slot receiver position. Now, if we got in Curtis Samuel like we did, and he was the better statistical performer out in the slot position, I would say, you know what? Go ahead and put Curtis Samuel in the slot because he would maximize the ability as an individual and as a whole as an offense. But when you look at some statistics, when you compare Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir season alone outperforms Curtis Samuel seasons in the slot in various statistical categories, right? So first of all, 39 receptions out of 45 targets. So that means every time Josh Allen is throwing the ball his way, there is an 86.67% percentage of a chance that Khalil Shakir is going to catch the ball. That is an amazing elite percentage.
Number 1 in the NFL.
Number 1 in the NFL by far, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Khalil Shakir played in the slot 77.3% of the time. He averages 15.7 yards per catch. Now, relate that to Curtis Samuel. When you look at how much he averages yards per catch, it's 9.9. right? So I think there's a significant difference there. Uh, Khalil Shakir has 286 yak yards coming out the slot. Curtis Samuel has 265. And the biggest proponent as to why I would keep Khalil Shakir in the slot is because he is averaging 7.3 yak yards
Mm-hmm.
per reception.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that again. 7.3 yak yards per reception.
Out
Curtis
of the slot.
Samuel,
Out of the slot.
out of the slot, Curtis Samuel is averaging 4.3 yak yards per reception. That's a 3-yard difference. That's a substantial difference. So based on certain statistical numbers and how he performs, I'm not saying Khalil Shakir can't play the outside. I'm pretty sure he's versatile to do so,
Yeah.
but I don't have enough numbers to back that up right now. Right now, what I do have is the statistical numbers in the slot receiver position, and those numbers are very impressive coming from Khalil Shakir. So if he's having that success, why should we change him up? Why should we do an AJ Epinesa, make him gain 20 pounds just to lose 20 pounds? No, let's keep him at the slot and let him continue to ascend and develop as the slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills in this Joe Brady offense.
I think what's good about it is that you have two receivers that are interchangeable. I think.
Yes.
I think that both guys you don't have to categorize as one or the other. We like what we saw from Khalil Shakir in the slot. Can he be the heir apparent to Cole Beasley, that guy that Josh Allen needed on 3rd and 8? You know, it was the guy that was going to get you 9 yards. We saw that from Khalil Shakir. Separation and target share. I mean, if you look at it compared to what Diggs' targets was down the stretch, he was a much better receiver. He was arguably the Bills' best wide receiver from week 9 until the end of the season, including the postseason. So I think it's a good bad situation to have, because you have all these guys that you can interchange these parts. And we haven't even talked about Dalton Kincaid and where he measures into this game plan and where you line him up, because does that mean you're taking Shakir off the field? Are you taking Samuel off the field, depending on your looks and stuff like that? So as of right now, the Bills have 4 really good pass catchers, and that's not even talking about adding a wide receiver in the draft, because I think Kincaid gets 100 targets at least this year. I mean, he went over 70 receptions, right? Diggs, is going to warrant 150 targets. That's what he's averaged his first 4 years. What does that leave for Shakir, and what does that leave for Samuel? And then if we draft a wide receiver, you're going to want to try to bring him along. So my only concern was the target share. And that leads me to this question. Do the Bills undervalue Khalil Shakir? Because on the surface, before we broke down the whole who's going to be the slot, who's going to be the X, who's going to line up outside, like, you brought up some interesting nuggets about Curtis Samuel actually performs better on the outside based on yak and based off of yards per reception, target percent, all that stuff.
Experience.
Yeah. So do you think Khalil Shakir, based off of how long it took him last year to kind of get him involved, and now that could have been a Ken Dorsey thing too, because we didn't see him utilized in 2022 under Ken Dorsey, and he was hardly utilized under Ken Dorsey, and then Joe Brady came in. Where do you think he is? Because I know the Bills are going to have to start playing young players a lot. We know that because of the salary cap situations and the long-term contracts, or the big money that they've already spent. Is he undervalued in Buffalo at all? And is this a case where his targets are going to come down because they spent a first-round draft pick on Dalton Kincaid? They just went out and paid upwards of $30 million based off incentives to a Curtis Samuel. You got Stefon Diggs already there. This guy's on a rookie deal. You got to maximize the talent while you have that rookie deal, right? So what do you think?
Now, I think we have to look at schemes and players, right? Once again, the elite players can play in any scheme. The elite quarterback can play in any scheme. The elite running back, the elite receiver, the elite players, blue chip collar players can play in any scheme. But when you're looking at Khalil Shakir, and you're looking at him being a 5th-round pick, and he was in the Ken Dorsey offense, and he's a young player. It's more about how to use this guy. How can we use this guy? And how can we implement and pay enough attention to a 5th-round pick to realize and understand how to use them while we have our core players in Diggs and Josh Allen, and we're trying to win a Super Bowl. And I think it was tough to understand how to use them in the Ken Dorsey offense. And then now, lo and behold, you have a Joe Brady offense. And it's like it was the best thing to happen to Khalil Shakir. Now we have an understanding on how to use him. He's reliable, he's trustworthy, he has deceptive speed. He can catch the ball short, intermediate, and long. He has the yak ability and can break tackles, and you can get him the ball out in space, and him being trustworthy to not turn over the ball, to catch the ball, and to make the correct play. We didn't know all those things until he got to the Joe Brady offense. So I don't think it's being underutilized. It's having an understanding on how to maximize the type of player you have. And now that he's bucked up into Joe Brady, I think they realize the value that they have, and they're going to continue to exploit what he does well against defenses that struggle in certain matchups. So no, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are undervaluing Khalil Shakir at all. Once again, it's a combative sport. Injuries happen as well. You're a Super Bowl team in a Super Bowl window. You want to protect yourself against depth as well, and have enough guys to step up in case guys go down for 1 or 2 games. So because of all those things, I think Khalil Shakir is appreciated, and we will see more of his appreciation within the Buffalo Bills offense this season.
I think too, like you look at the draft, they'll probably draft a couple receivers because for whatever reason, the injury bug has just depleted this team more so defensively than anything. But like you never know, right? You never know. One last point on Curtis Samuel. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about him. Like how much of this playbook do you think he already knows playing with Joe Brady? So it will be a pretty smooth transition coming from the point that I made where he was playing under a different offensive coordinator seemingly every year. Now he goes back to a guy that he's got familiarity with. Obviously, there will be tweaks and things like that, but that's good to know that he's not going to have to just take the whole offseason to learn the playbook. He's probably seen most of it already.
Right.
I do like the fact, and I did want to mention this about Curtis Samuel. I do like the fact that I think he can also give you a lot of stuff that we didn't talk about. He has a ton of rushing yards. He can do all the Isaiah McKenzie gadget stuff. He can. He's got 4.31 speed. He might be a little slower now. He's going into his 8th year, but he can do the return game too.
Yep.
So there's
versatility.
flexibility to what you can have him do. I'm just excited to see that we got guys that if we want to just, tic-tac-toe down the field, we can do that. And we can do that against anybody. And I said this to you earlier before we came on. Defenses are getting smart. They think that they're getting aggressively smart against Josh Allen because they play these soft zone defenses where they don't want him to attack you with a deep ball because they know Josh is going to try to make something happen downfield. That's just, it's in his DNA, right? So what the Bills are doing now and what Brandon Beane is doing now, he's got in two consecutive off seasons, he's gotten him guys that can get open underneath, guys that can get separation, on top of the fact that we already have Khalil Shakir. So he's got Shakir, who we've seen can get separation. He's got Dalton Kincaid, who we can see can get separation. Now he's got Curtis Samuel, who also can get separation. So,
and that's the thing, right? And I'm gonna say this, and I want to get the super chat up here. I know Izzy super chat. I want to get that up here. But that's the thing, right? It's about the evolution of the Buffalo Bills offense schematically and skill set wise, right? Because last year, the last couple of years, the Buffalo Bills, when you think about them as an offense, it's like, okay, you have Stefon Diggs. What else scares you, right? Like we spoke about a couple weeks ago, beyond Stefon Diggs. We know that Gabe Davis is a deep threat, but he's not a burner, so he's not going to scare us. Let's be cognizant of that. He doesn't have much of a route tree to be a threat anywhere else. So if we stop Diggs, we stop the deep ball from Gabe Davis. None of these other guys are a threat or have any type of explosiveness or yak ability. As good as the offense was for the Buffalo Bills statistically the last couple of years, when you run into a good defense and a good defensive coordinator that has a good formula on how to stop the offense can be stopped. But now this season, now it's starting to evolve. Now you still have Stefon Diggs, the complete receiver. You now understand the type of receiver you have in Khalil Shakir and know that he's a big proponent in the short and intermediate game, and he can make explosive plays happen from short. Now you have Curtis Samuel that can do the same thing and is every bit of explosive as Khalil Shakir. You have two guys underneath that can do things the Buffalo Bills offense never could do before, and you still have Stefon Diggs. Oh yeah, you have that developing freak of nature over there at tight end in Dalton Kincaid, who should take another uptick in year two. Right. The Buffalo Bills can build, I wouldn't say a perfect offense, but a scary offense. Don't want to talk about the draft too much, but if they can go out and get a speed, a burner downfield, a deep threat downfield that defenses have to be cognizant of as well, then it can be finally a mismatch nightmare for all levels, short, intermediate, and long, for defenses going up against the Buffalo Bills.
Agreed. Let me ask you this question. This is just off the top of my head while we were talking about, does anybody scare you after they take away Diggs? Because Gabe Davis, say what you want about Gabe Davis. I'm not. This isn't a comment or a topic about Gabe Davis.
Right.
He wasn't the answer at wide receiver 2. He never materialized, I don't think, into the player that the Bills thought he was going to be, that big body, deep threat guy that can get contested catches. The one that Brandon Beane seemed like he tried to get ever since he got here. And that's not a knock on Gabe Davis. That's just not who he is. The postseason game, the last one that the Bills lost against the Chiefs, was that, who would you place blame on more, the offense or the defense in that game? Because before I let you answer, I think if the Bills score on the pass, say what you want about how that game ended. I know everybody's got different opinions on Bask should have missed a field goal. Josh should have thrown to Diggs underneath. But let's just say, for instance, Josh completes that pass to Shakir, who was wide ass open in the end zone. And we all know Josh got hit and it fell short. Do you feel confident with the Bill? And this is completely taking this conversation down a rabbit hole. Do you feel completely confident that the Bills would have been able to make a stop? Because there would have been like a minute 30 left.
No.
So can we say that 2 of the last 3 postseason departures have had nothing to do with the offense whatsoever? Is that a fair statement? Now, 2 different offensive coordinators, right? Well, actually 3, because we had Dable, then we had Dorsey, and then we had Brady.
But see, it's hard to say that, because at the end of the day, even though I don't think the Buffalo Bills would have stopped Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, I still would want to see it. So you still have, you're in fringe red zone area. You're under 2 minutes. You got the ball. You've been driving. You're supposed to score there.
Agreed.
You're supposed to score there. So I'm not going to say offense didn't have nothing to blame, but I understand the theory of your question. It's about scoring points, man.
Well, I say that I say all that to say this, because every offseason, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talk about explosive plays. We've heard it for 3 straight off seasons. After 3 straight offseason losses, we've heard about speed. We've heard about explosive plays. We've heard about, we need this guy that can just take the top off the defense, makes the defense scared, all this stuff, a compliment to Diggs, all this stuff. weapons for Josh, however they phrase it, whatever the new catchy phrase is.
Mm-hmm.
What else needs to be done this offseason that you think is going to put this team over the top if they add, say they go out and get Brian Thomas Jr.?
Mm-hmm.
Is this offense killer elite, where miles above where it was last year? Because now, and this is going to lead into my poll question. I'm setting you up.
Mm-hmm.
So we draft a wide receiver in round 1, and people even say that we should draft one in round 3 or 4. We don't have a 3rd round pick, so round 4. So 2 of our top 3 picks are spent on the offense. Meanwhile, we just lost 12 free agents on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we want to keep stacking weapons for Josh and give him the best, core of skill position players that he's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But at what cost to the other side of the ball does that leave? Because to me, the Bills should have beat the Chiefs. I just think it was one missed play. Say what you want about a Bass missing the field goal to tie the game. I think if Josh doesn't get hit, they go up. The Bills go up 31-27. And I think that the way that game was playing out, the Bills had stopped the Chiefs in the last 2 drives and made them punt. So
I like that. I like the confidence.
They stopped in the 2 drives previous. I'm just saying it looked like they had something going. I know we were missing a bunch of guys, but do you know where I'm going with this? Like,
where are you going, Dave? Where are you going, DM3?
Focus all the attention on weapons for Josh, or should we look at the defense and say, holy cow, we are missing quite a bit here on the defensive line, in the secondary at safety? What, you know what I'm saying? Should we allocate all our resources towards offense, or should we?
This is,
you know what I'm saying?
I understand exactly.
I know. I kind of went around my asshole to get to my elbow there, but it was
the saying is, right. If I'm a defensive minded coach, right, the expectation I'm thinking of, and both sides of the ball, I'm thinking of as a defensive minded coach, I can get guys because I believe in my strengths and I believe I'm an above average defensive mind, and I believe that I can get the job done. And we've seen Sean McDermott get the job done. I believe defensive coaches should be able to coach guys up that's probably not the 1st round pick or the premier player. I seen Sean McDermott turn around the career of Jordan Poyer, who's a 7th round pick. Now, I'm not saying keep going to that well, but I'm going off the history. And because of the history, because of the type of coach we have is why this history has happened. Jordan Poyer is a 7th round pick. He is became a star with the Buffalo Bills. Micah Hyde was a 5th round pick. He became a star with the Buffalo Bills. EJ Gaines, you remember him?
Uh-huh.
He got another lucrative contract, because he had a successful season playing cornerback with the Buffalo Bills. I don't even remember who is that guy. Kevin Johnson. Remember Kevin Johnson, former 1st round pick? He had his 1-year stint with the Buffalo Bills. He had success his 1st year. Cyron Neal is a 4th round pick. Teron Johnson is a 4th round pick. I want a premium player on the offensive side of the ball the 1st round, because I know, based on my statistical history and my philosophy in developing players, I know that I can get the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th round selections on defense to develop and progress and make the impact based on my prowess as a defensive coach and based on the history that I have. I'm not an offensive guru. So because I'm not an offensive guru, I need that head start. Give me that impact player on offense. I will coach and develop and progress these guys on defense. And that's the philosophy I take out.
I'm going to put up Izzy's super chat because we forgot about it earlier. Yeah, sorry about that, Iz. You want to take this one, Akeem?
Yeah, shout out Izzy, man. Shout out Izzy for the super chat. JB runs a lot of trips. Joe Brady runs a lot of trip sets. Room for both of them to play in the slot at the same time. Khalil should be slot wide receiver 1. He breaks tackles and accelerates.
Perfect.
I agree 100%. Yeah,
that's our guy Izzy. He'll be on tomorrow night with the Red Zone Report. All right, I just like to get you going, man. I wanted to clear that up.
Man.
You guys know for Well, if you don't know me, I was trolling our group chat for the better part of 3 weeks, and I don't think anybody caught on to it. I think that Lance caught on to it at some point, where I was just saying that wide receiver is a dumb pick, and we should pick safeties. I did it on shows that I appeared on. I did it on no, like you said, if we can come away with a market value free agent that's a good value signing at safety, and we can get one somewhere on day 3, I think we're okay. Somebody's going to fall out of a tree and from now until OTAs, like from another team. Someone's just going to land on the street. Look at Leonard Floyd, Poona Ford. Like, say what you want about Poona Ford, but those guys kind of just fell into the Bills' lap, and it seems to happen every year to Brandon Beane. I don't think he counts on it, but he goes in and swoops it up when he can.
Definitely.
So I kind of also brought that up because of our poll question. What we're going to be doing, Akeem and myself, we're going to be doing a Founders Pod poll question of the week on the Built in Buffalo X page. I might actually start putting it on Facebook too, because of the huge following that we have on Facebook, just so I can get a wider scope. The poll question was, what is the most important need after the first wave of free agency for the Buffalo Bills in the first round of the draft? The choices were defensive line, wide receiver, and safety. How do you think this played out, Akeem?
I'm thinking guys are we're smart, educated fans, and we went wide receiver. It went wide receiver. It dominated. Tell me I'm right.
So almost 700 votes on this poll. Safety 45%, wide receiver 37%.
Wow.
Defensive line 18%.
Wow.
So again, everybody thinks differently about how the Bills can construct this roster. We're just giving you our opinions on what we think the Bills should do. I think that you should just try to score as many points as humanly possible. And you have a quarterback that can give you all pro, all world, Hall of Fame type numbers every single year. Take some of the slack away from him doing these dumb tush pushes and getting. Do I like watching Josh Allen in the stat column have 15 rushing touchdowns? Sure, I think we all do. But let's get him. Let's get the team touchdowns another way. Let's get him some receiving touchdowns for his guy. So, all right, Akeem.
Yeah.
We have 550 people watching. You guys are awesome. Smash that like button. Subscribe on YouTube. Share this on Facebook. And keep those comments coming. So let's move on to the Bills signings that happened this past week. We didn't get a chance to talk about Daquan Jones. I believe that was one that was on everybody's big board for the Bills. I know he was in my top 7. Not just Bills or not just free agents, but any player, even if they were on the Bills or not, to bring back and re-sign. So what do you think about bringing back Daquan Jones, and does the injury last year concern you with his age at all?
I'm glad you said that, because we just spoke about wanting a wide receiver round 1, right? But that is more of what we want the Buffalo Bills to do. That's more of the fan perspective of the situation, right? But let me take the fan hat off for a minute, and let me go get the GM hat. Now, once I place the GM hat on, now all of a sudden, a defensive line is in play in round 1 for the Buffalo Bills. Defensive line is absolutely in play for the Buffalo Bills round 1.
Look who our GM is. He's proven to take the position that you don't think he should take in round 1.
Not only that, we're worried about you asked me a question about Curtis Samuel's injury history, and I said I'm not too concerned. I am concerned with Daquan Jones and his injury history now. Now, what the rebuttal would be with Daquan Jones, he's been healthy for the majority of his career, and that is absolutely right. But now he's 33 years old, and I remember 2 things. I remember the injury against the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoff game, where he missed that playoff game. He was healthy all season, but he missed the most important game of that season, right? And it hurt us. And he missed last year when he tore his pec. And the last time I checked, the numbers and age don't go like this. It goes like this.
Right.
Right. So I have my concerns on how durable Daquan Jones is and can be going forward. And when I think like that, I'm absolutely thinking about drafting a defensive tackle in round one, especially because the wide receiver class is so loaded that I can go ahead and still get an impact player at receiver round two. I'm not sure if I can go ahead and do the same thing at the defensive tackle on the defensive line position. The best player available on Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott's board may be defensive line.
And you know, it's funny about the wide receiver position, and I'll backtrack for a second because I know it's a deep draft at the position. I know it's probably the deepest it's been in a long time, probably since the 2013 draft. Would you say this draft is comparable to that?
Is that the Sammy Watkins draft?
That's the OBJ and Mike Evans and all that.
Okay. Yeah. You could probably compare it there.
If we're not picking one of the top 5 guys, 6 guys, because we're at 28, if there's a run on wide receivers and say the Bills at 28 get the 6th best wide receiver, is he making an immediate impact on this roster this year? Honestly, is he making an immediate impact knowing that we got Stefon Diggs, we just signed Curtis Samuel, we got Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, who are all going to want targets, not to mention James Cook out of the backfield, whatever we do with RB2, right? So
in a minute.
Yeah, which we'll get to in a minute. So my thing is, if you don't go get one of the big boys, which I don't think the Bills can get anywhere near in striking distance to get one of these guys, because if you want Brian Thomas Jr., you're going to probably have to get in the top 15. And I don't know if being the way this roster is constructed, depth-wise, from 53 up to, say, 35, if we can afford to get rid of draft picks and move up to 16, 15, 13 to go get a proven commodity. So back to your point about defensive tackle, if they're looking for a true one tech to replace Daquan Jones and be next to Ed Oliver for the foreseeable future, that could be something that the wide receiver could be day 2. And they use picks to maybe move up a little further into day 2. It's not going to cost you as much as to move up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's the
I can
idea.
honestly see Brandon Beane taking a defensive tackle that is the heir apparent to Daquan Jones down the line. Plus the heavy rotation, you need guys anyways. And you need someone that can learn from a Daquan Jones and sit next to Ed Oliver for maybe a couple years, get in some quality reps and just keep it moving. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Is defensive end out of play in round? Is anywhere along the defensive line out of question in round 1?
No,
for the Buffalo Bills?
I don't think so. And I'm seeing more and more of these national media mocks. Say what you want about mock drafts. It's still March 16th. Say what you want. A lot of them have edge defenders. So, I mean, I being picked to the Bills at 28. So I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. So let's talk about the guys that the Bills did sign. We talked about Daquan Jones. What's your initial reaction when the Bills signed Mac Hollins, the big boy, the big former Raider, former Falcon wide receiver, special teams guy, guru? I think that a lot of Bills fans instantly went to Google after they signed him to see who he was. Us that are around football a little bit more know, I think, a little bit about what he is. He's a special teams guy. That's who he is. My take on it is I think that they got rid of Tyron Neal, right? And they needed a big body that can also be wide receiver 5, but can also give you the Tyron Neal special team reps. What's your thoughts?
Mac Hollins, 6'4", 220. He has that deceptive speed, kind of like Gabe Davis. He probably get downfield and likes to stretch the field as that big body receiver. Best statistical season came in 2022 when he had 57 receptions, 690 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Number 5 receiver. I believe he's a number 5 receiver as well, but I also believe he is an upgrade over guys like Jake Kumaro and over guys like Trent Sherfield. And I think he adds different dimensions to his game. I think he can be a reliable number 5 receiver. And I think he can be versatile in terms of playing special teams as well. I think he can play special teams, like you said, in that Cyron Neal role, and I think he can uh, be a good run blocker within the offense for the Buffalo Bills, kind of in that Gabe Davis role when necessary, to be that big body receiver to get out there and block. So I like the acquisition. I also like it because of the locker room presence. He's been on multiple teams and been a captain multiple times. And we spoke about leadership last week. We lost a lot of leaders with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and a lot of locker room guys that meant a lot to the football team. And I think Mac Hollins can be a part for this season of that new leadership group that the Buffalo Bills may need. The Mac Hollins, the Rasul Douglas, the Von Millers, or in terms of the new leadership group within the locker room for the Buffalo Bills. So overall, I like the acquisition, understanding where he's placed in the pecking order for the Buffalo Bills in the wide receiver room.
One note on Gabe Davis too. You brought up Gabe Davis earlier when you were talking about what he kind of can replace skill set wise. Gabe Davis was well liked in that locker room. I mean, he was a team captain last year. So we talk about leadership. That speaks volumes to losing Gabe Davis. That's another one that we didn't bring up when we talked about leadership. He meant a lot to a lot of people in that locker room. I know the front office loved him too. Loved his work ethic. Loved him just as a human being. To me, I've heard this a lot by other content creators out there, that he's a really good blocker. Do you want your wide receiver 5 to be your best blocking wide receiver? No, because then that means you have to put him on the field, right? Like, you're taking snaps away from your better wide receivers.
I mean, is that a problem when it's a run play? If you know it's a run play, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because the other teams are going to know that's why he's on the field. That's why when Trent Sherfield was on the field, I knew it was a run play. Whenever Gabe Davis was lined up and he'd move closer to the line of scrimmage, I knew it was a run play because he just became an extension of the offensive line. So if you're putting Mac Hollins on there, you probably know 9 times out of 10, it's a run play, and it's probably going to the side that he's on. So I'm just saying, like, the Bills have boxed themselves into having these small receivers. The Bills wide receiver room right now is small. It is small. Curtis Samuel's 5'11". Khalil Shakir is under 6 foot. Stefon Diggs is under 6 foot, isn't he? Isn't he 5'10", 5'11"?
They may be a fringe 6 footers,
So that's why I'm
not
saying
the biggest room.
That's
Definitely
why I'm saying this. He feels like he checks those boxes. Okay, he's a big guy. He's got a big build. You know, he can do contested catches, but he's still only here, I believe, for special teams. And he replaced what they got rid of in Cyron Neal. Tyler Matakevich is gone. The thing to me is he's possibly taking reps away offensively from Justin Shorter, who I want to really see what we have in him. We didn't get to see any of it last year. Not saying he's going to be a make or break like the Bills offense. We got to have Justin Shorter, but I want to see what we have.
Does he make the team? Do the
I
Buffalo
don't know.
Bills?
Who is he? Who's Justin Shorter?
Who the hell is? I don't know.
I remember
either.
him flexing like in June, and he was massive. He looked like DK Metcalf, and then we never saw him again. Like that was it. So, all right, another one that we signed, former Philadelphia Eagles linebacker Nicholas Morrow. And I know you want to talk about him because I feel like this is a very under the radar signing. A lot of people first were to throw out on social media that he's like a missed tackle machine. He's actually not. He's a really, really good, skilled Mike linebacker. And he is the new Terrell Dodson. That's who he is, and that's who the Bills needed. I am a little concerned about Dorian Williams because we still don't know what he is, but I guess that's another story for another day. But what's your initial thoughts on Nicholas Morrow and the signing? You think it's a good signing, just a depth piece? Like, what do you make of it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We lost Terrell Dodson. I believe, to the Seattle Seahawks. So,
Yep.
we already lost Tyler Medikevich, so we was a little thin with our linebacker group. So Nicholas Morrow implant him, and I think it's a good acquisition. He provides depth. 12 starts last year, 66 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 3 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 5 QB hits. He seems like a pretty active defender, and he seems like a guy that if you needed a player to make that spot start, he can definitely do so and excel in that job. So I like the acquisition, and honestly, I like where the linebackers are right now. I know you spoke about not knowing about Dorian Williams. I think he flashed a bit last
I think
season.
so too. But where does he mix in now that they went out and got somebody who can start games?
A depth player. Yeah,
Depth?
I think he's depth. You never know what may happen. We hope everybody stays healthy
Right.
in the room, but you never know what may happen. But you have Milano and Bernard as the starters. Now you have Dorian Williams that can take that place of Milano. You have Nicholas Morrow, and I really like what Balin Spector showed last season as well. Being another late round pick, 7th round pick. So I like the linebacker room a little bit. Still room to grow, young in youth and experience, but I like the ability that the linebacking core possess.
Not to mention that Bobby Babich was the linebackers coach last year before he's now obviously the defensive coordinator. So it's probably time where he's starting to put some of his input in on some of these positions that are being picked, or these players that are being picked up in these positions that are being filled. And I'm going to warn Bills Mafia right now that this coming 2 weeks, probably, there's going to be a lot of players that you're going to have to Google because Beane's going to have to start filling a roster out. He's going to have to get up to 90 after the draft. So there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to get these league minimum deals that aren't going to count against the cap because they only count the top 51 right now. So just be patient. I don't think there's any more big moves happening. We all want Justin Simmons. I get it. I just don't think that's in the cards. Here's the thing, too. We can't say on one hand that we need to get younger, but then we got to sign a Justin Simmons because Justin Simmons is 30. He'll be 31 when the season starts. So do we want to get younger or do we want to get the flashy guy that has played in the league for a while? That's good. I would love Justin Simmons, but I'm just saying, like, we have to start recycling these positions with draft picks. We have to. We have to. At some point, we have to just continuously get younger and hope that they draft, develop, and we can re-sign the ones that we can re-sign. So, all right, last guy that we signed, I know you enjoy this player a lot. I know we've talked about him last year. We've talked about him this offseason so far, is Ty Johnson. I think a lot of Bills Mafia has fallen in love with Ty Johnson because he seemingly came out of nowhere and made the roster. And I thought he played really well in spells where he was filling in for Latavius Murray. He had really good games. The Cowboys game, when James Cook actually wasn't on the field, like Ty Johnson was getting the same, carries and he was getting the same yards. So what's your thoughts on the Ty Johnson signing? And then this will be a 2-part question. Is he RB2? Can he be an RB2 or is he straight RB3 depth right now?
First of all, I love Ty Johnson. I love the signing. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. I've always liked Ty Johnson and his capabilities as a running back. He does a handyman special. I'm not saying that he's great, but he does a little bit of everything, and he has some explosiveness to him as well. He makes me appreciate fundamental football. You run, you catch, you don't fumble, you catch the ball, you make the right play. He doesn't wow you. He didn't do anything. It's like, oh my God, what a spectacular play. Only 30 attempts, 132 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, only seven receptions, over 60 yards and a touchdown. So the stats don't wow you, but you appreciate him doing things the right way. And you appreciate when James Cook did need a spell, or when we did need another guy to come in and make things happen. Ty Johnson was that guy to make it happen. In a perfect world, Ty Johnson is a number 3 running back in the Buffalo Bills offense. Perfect world, the Buffalo Bills would get that running back 2, possibly in the draft, and then they have a 3 staple running back room in James Cook, player X, and Ty Johnson. And I think if that was to happen, I think that would maximize the running backs that the Bills have even more, because I think it will be plenty to go around for the running backs in the Joe Brady offense.
I'm still holding out for Zeke, man.
You and Zeke, man. You and Zeke.
It's the perfect fit. He catches. I want him to be a pass catcher and a pass blocker because I know that we can use as many pass blockers as humanly possible. Not saying our offensive line is bad, but we need some guys that can produce other than just toting the rock. Another thing about Ty Johnson too is he can do kick and punt returns too. Not that you would want him to do it consistently, but in a spell. Same with Curtis Samuel. He's got experience doing that as well. So I think we touched on Stefon Diggs being in the media with the cryptic tweets. We touched on Curtis Samuel. We talked about Khalil Shakir. We talked about all the signings. Anything else that tickles your fancy that you wanted to touch on heading into the second week of free agency?
No, man. I think we covered all bases. Deion Dawkins get resigned. He did a little troll job like Diggs. Players just like that type of feedback and type of attention.
Deion came out and said, just kidding, because I think Daquan Jones was going to punch him in the face.
Right.
Because Daquan Jones was like, bro, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. And then Deion was like, just kidding. I love you guys. I mean, did anybody in Bills Mafia really think that Deion Dawkins was going to either get released or traded? No.
No.
He's going to be here the rest of his career.
It made me go, for a minute, but no. But yeah, man, I think we touched on all the topics today again. I think it was another excellent show. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Over 600 people on this live right now. We appreciate all 600. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, what you enjoyed the show. Dave, next week is going to be another week, brother.
Yeah, next week, another week. I saw in the comments somebody talking about AJ Epinesa. You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, why not?
Re-signing AJ Epinesa. What's your thoughts? Because he was on, I think both of us, we had him as a top priority trying to get him back. I think for me, he was finally getting to a point where he was starting to become what we thought he was going to be coming out of college. Like he was our first pick, obviously, in 2020, the year that we traded for Stefon Diggs. So he was a second round pick because we didn't have a first. But the Bills, I think, and I don't want to blame Sean McDermott specifically, but I think they didn't know what they wanted to do with him. They didn't know if he was too heavy. They didn't know if he was too light. They were moving him around. And I think he was finally coming into his own. He had some flashes last year where it's like, wow, he had the interception for the touchdown. There was some other plays that were, to me, watching the Bills defense down the stretch, they just looked really tired. Does that make sense?
It does.
And then if you look at the guys that were out there, Leonard Floyd, Daquan Jones, when he came back, people were complaining about where was Ed Oliver in the playoffs. Well, the man played a lot more snaps than he typically does because of the rotation. He played, I want to say 75% of the snaps this year, which is a huge uptick for the DTs under McDermott. So if we can get younger at that position as well, which bleeds back into the draft conversation, maybe these guys can withstand some of this success into week 16, 17, 18, postseason, Super Bowl run. Does that make sense? But what's your thoughts on AJ coming back?
And that makes perfect sense. And 2-year deal, relatively cost-effective deal for a player that we drafted, we developed, and we re-signed. I think AJ Epinesa has flashed and improved each year. He was worried about, and I think he fell to the second round because of his RAS score and because of the lack of athletic ability he possessed during the combine. But on the football field, he does show some athleticism, and he is a gaudy player out there standing at 6'5", 265, 270 pounds, and he flashed, and he's going to, at 26 years old, he's in the prime of his career with possibly the best football ahead of him. So I think it was an excellent signing for the Buffalo Bills to maximize the potential from AJ Epinesa, and for the Buffalo Bills to get the best of the best that they can possibly get from the individual in AJ Epinesa. So I like the signing for both sides.
Yeah, I think it was a perfect value sign. You got a guy who's already been in the system. He's played for McDermott already for years, and then you didn't break the bank on a defensive end. Because you're still, even though Vaughn restructured his contract, you still have to pay him next year because he's going to be here next year. I saw a comment talking about, Connor McGovern moving to center, and Mitch Morse obviously released. We did touch on that on last week's show, but to me, I don't know if that was just something that was put out to just kind of I don't want to say it's a feeler. I'm sure it's something that they want to try because McGovern does have the flexibility of playing center. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's competition brought in for left guard, for the center position, and then you move McGovern back to left guard. What's your take on that? You think that they should be looking to upgrade that as well? Not upgrade, but have a contingency plan at center or left guard in case David Edwards doesn't work out at left guard. We all think he will. He's getting paid $6 million. That's a starting left guard contract. But what's your thoughts on that whole left guard center mix?
I'm not so sure if David Edwards is the starting guard. If I'm the Buffalo Bills, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we have the money to spend to get something better, but I do believe with 11 draft picks, multiple fifth-round picks, I do believe the Buffalo Bills will bring in some type of competition for one or two of those positions, and that will be an outright battle for David Edwards. If he beats the rookie out, then he will be the guard. But if the rookie shows any type of flash or any type of ability that he has potentially a higher ceiling than a David Edwards, then I wouldn't be surprised if we get a rookie guard in here that would end up being the starter. But right now, I'm penciling in David Edwards as the starting guard for the Buffalo Bills.
I have a rebuttal for you because Ryan Bates was making more than David Edwards is making. The Bills went out and drafted Osiris Torrance, and they signed Connor McGovern, and they already had Ryan Bates under contract, making $5.4 million a year. So to them, I guess it's just all about the player and not the contract.
Right. Unless
it obviously gets into the Von Miller situation where, he's going to want $20 million and you want to try to figure that out. But it's going to be interesting. They got a lot of guys under contract, and I'm hoping for continuity, even though it's not Mitch Morse at center. We have a guy that was on the roster last year that played for the offensive line coach that's just moving. We had another guy that we can fill in the left guard that was on the roster last year. So time on task. We've been talking about that, right? So
we hoping they could be seamless transitions, but we'll see.
We hope so. Other than that, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here and let everybody enjoy their Saturday nights? I know it's getting late out there on the East Coast.
No, man. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, man. And another excellent job, another excellent show, man. Various topics, compelling discussion. So I think we covered it all.
Yeah, we're gonna probably start our draft talk. I'd say we get one more show next week, just kind of wrapping up anything that the Bills do news-wise, signings-wise this coming week, and then we'll probably start gearing up towards the draft. Akeem and me are we'll do some mock drafts, live on the show and stuff like that. Probably bring our guy Lance in to have him kind of help us navigate through all that stuff. But yeah, this was a great show. I mean, everybody out there enjoy it. I know the weather's been real nice out there on the East Coast, so everybody enjoy your Saturday nights. We'll be back here next week, same time, right here, 9 p.m. Hey, Rich, DM3, as always, go Bills.
Who